Howdy folks, welcome back to Boondockery. Today's video is going to be a viewer Q&A. Over the past several years, I've received thousands upon thousands of questions. A lot of these questions pertain specifically to things I'm covering in the video. And some of the questions may be about something they see in the background. It may be about something I'm wearing. It may be about something I mentioned in one of my backstories that I lead up to the focus of my videos with. And so I always do the best I can with answering all those. But my wonderful wife asked me the other day, have you ever done any Q&A videos? And I said, well, not really. And she goes, almost everyone that I watch on YouTube, they do Q&A videos. You might want to give it a try. So here I am. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through and I'm going to answer some of the questions that were asked frequently here very recently in some of my videos. And I also, once I got the idea from my wonderful wife, I decided that I put it up on my community page to let folks know that if you have any questions, go ahead and submit them and I will answer them in this video. So this is a combination between the questions I received in the community page and also from my more recent videos. As many of you know, I can be a little long-winded, but rest assured I'm going to try to keep all of these answers as short and pithy as I possibly can. There's only 10 questions and I'll get through this as rapidly but as effectively as I possibly can. The first question is, how effective is Walnut Dyed UCP in night vision? And this might go against the whole purpose of a Q&A, but the answer is currently I do not know. However, this is going to be a teaser for an upcoming video because I am going to collaborate with a couple people that have really great current issue night vision. And I'm going to work with them and I'm going to see exactly how effective Walnut Dyed UCP is, as well as Multicam and night vision. So look forward to that video, hopefully in the next month or so. Question 2. What is the camo pattern of the smock you're wearing? You mean this smock? Well, the camouflage pattern of this smock is M43 Oakleaf pattern. It's a German World War II pattern, and not only is it the pattern of the fabric, it's also a reproduction smock. And this particular smock is incredibly well designed. Has elasticized cuffs, waist. It's a decent length for you to wear your rig, your load-bearing equipment over, and there's all kinds of nice little loops in it for foliage, for camouflage. It fits incredibly well, and it also even has ventilations in the armpit. It's just an incredibly well made smock. Now, I would say about 20 years ago when Multicam first came out, there was a big hubbub as far as this newfangled thing. Is it all that? Some people were poo-pooing it, some people loved it, and I decided I was going to really see how good Multicam was. So I purchased a lot of different countries' camouflage clothing, and I did photographs that I posted on Facebook and with particular groups, and to get their viewpoints as well as knowing my own through having them in different environments where I live and seeing the effectiveness of these patterns. And as a result, I started researching World War II patterns, and I decided, what the hey? There were a lot of companies out there making reproduction uniforms in different patterns. I saw the Oakleaf, and I decided I was going to go for it. And I went ahead and ordered this, and I've had this ever since. Unfortunately, almost everything else that I had purchased back then was destroyed in our house fire that we had about 9 years ago. And but this one survived, and I still wear it. It's an absolutely fantastic piece of kit. Not only is it in this brown and tan pattern, but it is also reversible to a summer pattern in greens. And I also purchased a matching cap with it. But to answer your question, the camouflage pattern is M43 Oakleaf. The next question, number 3, how can you make a 3-season tent better in the winter? No snow, just cold. Well, a lot of that has to do with the size of your tent and the configuration of your tent. If you have a small 1 or 2 person tent with a fly, and those are the ones that have the fiberglass pole construction, they frequently will have ventilation at the top, and the fly will go over it. If your fly extends pretty close to the ground, that's fantastic, because that's going to afford you the ability to actually do something with it to make it warmer. If it is one of those flies that just sort of drapes over the ventilation, there's not a whole lot you can do. Now, one of the things that you can easily do with adding nothing to the tent whatsoever, and you're dealing with cold and you're not dealing with snow, it can work either way. What you want to do is you want to push all the leaves that you possibly can around your tent up over that ventilation, and that's going to block that a good bit. And you want to get that piled up as much as you possibly can. That's going to allow a lot of the heat to stay in. It's still going to permeate through the fabrics because those fabrics are very thin. They are not insulated. The other thing you can do is you can drape a sheet, just a regular cotton sheet, over your tent before you put your fly on, and that will help a good little bit. And Light Fighter has their Light Fighter 1. I own one. And they make a winterization kit. And literally all that it is a sheet-like fabric that has been cut in the same pattern as the inner tent, and you simply hook it into position directly over the inner mesh tent, and you put your fly over top of it. That's their winterization kit. It sells for about 120 to 150 bucks depending on where you get it. Now, if you drape your sheet over it, and if you have a 1 or 2 person tent, the size of that sheet will vary, and also the shape of it. If you have a 1 person rectangular tent, something like a full size sheet might do it. Might have to take it all the way up to a queen size. If you have a 2 person, a king size would probably do it well enough to drape that in. Now, you're going to have a little bit of a problem with condensation because you don't have airflow anymore, but you have heat retention. One of the things you can do, and I did this after the wonderful world of that thing that happened a few years ago, which we weren't allowed to go to work, we weren't allowed to go any place. You know, the thing. And billions upon billions of these things were produced and distributed. A simple mask to wear while you're in your tent. That's going to absorb a lot of the moisture vapor from your breath, which is where the vast majority of condensation comes from. You may not realize it, but you could lose up to 16 ounces of water through your respiration over the course of an evening. Now, just imagine taking a 16-ounce bottle, spray bottle, and misting it on the inside of your tent. Yeah. So you're going to have a little bit of problem with that. If you don't like those masks, you don't want it behind your ears or anything else like that, one of the things you can actually do is take an old t-shirt to where the sleeves of the t-shirt are all stretched out and it may have holes in it or whatever. Cut the sleeve off. You can actually pull that down over your face right here and it will do the same thing. And you're just blocking the vast majority of the water vapor from your breath in that, and it should take care of a little bit of that condensation. The other thing you can do, and this is if you do have a little bit of ventilation coming in, you can periodically burn one of those UCO candles in the lantern. Hang that in your tent and burn that for a few minutes, and that will actually help dry out a little bit of that moisture that is accumulated on the inside. And but if you have everything buttoned up, things like that, you're going to be fine, because the fabric and the sheets will breathe. You're not going to suffocate. It's not like you're putting a plastic sheet over the whole thing, which is non-water permeable, and it's not going to let any air in or out whatsoever. A sheet will breathe simply fine. Those are some tips I would probably try and experiment with it. See what you think. And a source for your sheets. If you have a wife or a significant other that's a little bit particular about her bed sheets, you can go to Goodwill. You can go to a thrift store and buy these things. You could, if you're feeling pretty crafty, you can actually buy a couple and do a little cutting and a little sewing to where you have a more form-fitting cover that you could drape over that inner tent and put your fly over top of it. But that in combination with the outer fly, with the leaves, that should dramatically increase your warmth factor in there. And just your body temperature alone is going to actually be felt inside the tent if you try those. Question 4. Can I reuse the spent calcium acetate from the gelled alcohol fuel? Now, this is another one of those that will be answered in an upcoming video. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there for those folks that have, asked. I answered, in a similar way. But looking at the material, once you get it out of there and you regranulize it, it's a powder. Structurally, it's a very different thing than the little teeny tiny granules that I had with the original calcium acetate. I think I only spent about $15 for that great big bottle that I had, and I realize that the prices vary depending on the size of the jar you have. The smaller the jar you have, the more expensive it's going to be. But conservatively, I've got at least another 30 to 50 batches out of that. So I'm not as concerned about trying to save the money to recycle this. However, since it was asked so frequently, I am going to do it. It will be a future video. So on that question, be patient and you will get your answer pretty much as soon as I do. Question number 5 is the second most frequently asked question about gelled alcohol. Now, the question comes in various forms, but in a nutshell, the question is, can you make larger batches? Absolutely. You most absolutely definitely can make bigger batches. Just like when you're baking something at home, you're making a recipe at home that you're cooking. If you have a lot more people, well, you just double the recipe. And depending on the size of the vessel you have and the volume, you can make your calculations from there. And as a side question, is like, well, could you use other containers other than mason jars? Yes, you absolutely positively can. The first container that I used was a little, they call them lock boxes. They're like Tupperware, except they have a rubber seal in them, and there's little latches on the four sides that lock it and hold it in the position. And the first batch I made, that's where I kept it for about 2 years. And it was perfectly fine, perfectly usable. Just over a period of time, the alcohol separates just a little bit, as well as a little bit of the distilled water, but it still burns perfectly well. I mean, just as well as this fresh batch I have here. So you don't have to use mason jars. You can use any waterproof, watertight container that you want to use, and you can make it any size of batch that you want. Just take the information I had on the video and multiply it to be able to match the volume of the vessel that you're going to be using. Question 6, and this one could be an entire video all on its own. What makes a good bushcrafting companion? And when I read this question, the first thing that popped into my mind was the relationship that Daniel Boone had with Simon Kenton. And both of which were incredibly skilled in every possible skill set that would be important for the time period in which they lived, where they were, and what they were doing. And the reason that they enjoyed each other's company so much is they knew that, unlike a whole lot of other people that they have had to take on raids or military actions or long hunts or things like that, that they weren't going to have to take care of each other. They knew that they were completely capable on their own. And that's the first thing that popped in my head. But the other thing, you getting more into going out and enjoying a weekend bushcrafting. First of all, you have to be friends, or you have to have compatibility, which means you have similar values, you do things in a similar way. Not necessarily the same, but you need to have those core values and appreciation for the wilderness, appreciation for what you're doing. And when you go out, you need to have the same goals for the weekend. It's like, why are we going out? We just going out, hang out, drink a few brewskis. That's not bushcrafting. When you go out, there should be goals in mind. Okay, we're going to go out and we're just going to tarp camp, ground tarp camp. We're going to go out, we're going to hammock camp. And then also throw a few things in there. Well, we're going to practice on our fire making skills. We're going to try different kinds of fire making. We're going to go out and we're going to try to find as many natural tinders as we possibly can in our area that we're going to be bushcrafting in, and we're going to see how effective they are. You're going to intentionally go out in the rain and see what you can do as far as staying dry, staying warm, making fire, being able to cook over fire in the rain, things like that. These are all things that are goals that you really should have in mind before you go out. Let's see. Learning and teaching. Whenever I go out with someone, I fully expect that there is something that they know that they can teach me. And I always am in a position to where if I see someone I'm bushcrafting with, wild camping with, that's struggling in a particular way, I'll ask them if they would like for me to show them this way that I do it, and make that a teaching moment. And anytime that you go out, it should be reciprocated. And if you are in the woods with someone that you can reciprocate teaching and learning with, you get so much more out of it other than just enjoying the woods, which there's nothing wrong with that per se. But when I go out with people and those types of elements aren't there, we don't have the same goals. There are certain personality traits with someone that I've gone out with that I don't particularly care for. That puts a stress on the entire rest of the weekend, and you wind up dealing with it as opposed to enjoying it. So, you know, in a nutshell, compatibility, sharing the same goals, sharing the same passion, and be willing to learn as well as teach. That's what I would think would be a really good bushcrafting companion. The next question, which is number 8, also refers to my perlite alcohol burner and gelled alcohol fuel. And the question is, couldn't you just mix perlite with gelled alcohol? The answer is yes, you could, but it's not going to be more efficient. It might even make it less efficient. And the reason being is the perlite burner works because the perlite itself is like little teeny tiny volcanic rocks, and they're filled with all kinds of little teeny tiny holes. It actually absorbs alcohol, and as it burns, those little teeny tiny rocks are heated and allow gasification of the alcohol that's absorbed therein. The gelled alcohol, you have basically an emulsification process which occurs with the calcium acetate activated by the distilled water, and it coagulates the alcohol in a way to where it slowly burns. That's why I prefer using that for cooking, because it's a much lower temperature. It takes a longer amount of time for that alcohol to burn away from the calcium acetate. The distilled water evaporates in the form of steam. And to combine the two, it might actually even be detrimental, because you have this glob that is going to prevent the heating of the perlite in order to release gasified alcohol. And so adding the two together, in my way of thinking, would be counterproductive for the purposes that I had. I prefer the perlite alcohol burner for a good controlled release of heat that is a fairly high heat, and I use that to boil water. And the gelled alcohol I use to be able to have a lower temperature of heat that burns for a very long time in order for me to cook things like frying bacon, or any of the other things that you would want to simmer or to fry, saute, those types of things. It's just a more controlled burn without having to invest in to something like an MSR Whisper Light stove that you can control the amount of flame that comes through. So by having the perlite stove and an empty Altoid tin for me to be able to use my gelled alcohol in takes up a very small amount of space, very inexpensive. The entire process of making the gelled alcohol, all of that is fairly inexpensive. Takes a tiny little bit of time. If you watch the video, you saw how rapidly the gelatinous quality, is created. So to me, it's a poor man's version of being able to have the best of both worlds. Something to boil water with, and also something to be able to really cook with in a controlled heat. Question number 9. Who makes the Multicam Anarak you wear? This Anarak, you say? Well, of course it is. This is the one. It was manufactured by Seals Action Gear, a company in Canada. Well, I have had this Anarak for about 20 years. And back when Multicam was first the thing, there was virtually no companies in the United States manufacturing anything in Multicam, except for Cry, of course. And so my buddy John discovered them, and we wound up ordering a uniform, trousers and a blouse. And it was made out of a very similar, if not the same, fabric that the British used for their DPM uniforms, which it's a heavier fabric, very similar to the weight of our poplin uniforms when I was in the Army. And however, it was much softer, much more comfortable to wear, and I think it was more breathable. So even though it was heavier, it was more comfortable in warmer months than our poplin uniforms were when I was in the Army with the Woodland. Well, we ordered those, absolutely, elated with them, so we ordered the Anaraks. Unfortunately, Seals Action Gear closed their doors in March of 2017. So you can no longer purchase these uniforms from them. Whether or not, or the Anarak from them, whether or not you can find them on eBay or anything else like that, roll the dice. You might luck out. It's a phenomenal design. It's a very basic Anarak, but it's excellent. I mean, the size I had, because of the length of my arms, I'm not that big of a guy. I had to roll the cuffs up a little bit to keep them out of the way, simply because the buttons on the Anarak sleeves don't go around far enough to be able to secure them around my wrist and able to do it. And I kind of like them looser anyway, so that way I can look at my watch, things like that. However, if you are interested in an OCP Anarak, my good friend and BIC Jay, brother Jay, he got me this. I don't remember whether it was for Christmas or my birthday. I think it was for my birthday. And this little beauty, I believe he purchased it from Sportsman's Guide. And it is a basic Anarak. This is a basic Anarak. And my understanding, it's pretty ding-dang cheap. I spent in excess of I don't even go there. I spent a lot of money for this. And this fabric is just a little bit heavier than the fabric in the Seals Action Gear Anarak. So it makes it a little more, I guess, user-friendly for the colder weather. And if you were to treat this with a DWR, durable water repellent mixture, you can do your own, or you can buy the Kiwi version. They also have like Camp Dry, all kinds of other things that you can treat these with. I've treated this with it, and it will make it water resistant. Light rain, drizzle, thing like that, it'll bead up and roll right off. And but this is the one that Jay got me. You might want to check out Sportsman's Guide to see if they still have these. You have pretty much all the same features in this that I have with this. You have the center pocket. It's got a zipper. Mine doesn't have a zipper. It's Velcro. I have the little pocket that goes all the way through. This has a pocket that goes all the way through. Drawstring around the waist. Drawstring around the waist. This one actually has a drawstring at the bottom. And yeah, I guess mine does too. My Seals Action Gear. The only difference primarily, it's a heavier fabric and it's in OCP as opposed to Multicam. And you can see for yourself that the shapes of the colors are different, but they're essentially, they're pretty much as effective as the other. But anyway, that's who made it. The last question, question number 10. I'm curious as to any military service you may have had and would love to hear some stories if you did serve. Well, that right there, telling stories from my time in the service, could be its own YouTube channel. But when it gets right down to it, who wants to hear an old Cold War vet ramble on about stories from his time in the service? Those would be things that would probably be more enjoyed sitting around a campfire. Yes, I did serve. I was in the United States Army. I was a cavalry scout, 19 Delta, and I served stateside at Fort Knox, Kentucky in the 194th Armored Brigade and Troop Delta, 10th United States Cavalry. And the 194th Armored Brigade at the time was the spear tip of the United States Rapid Deployment Force. And we were tasked with being able to be deployed on the ground, ready to fight anywhere in the world within 72 hours after notification. And that's what we trained for. And let me put this a little bit of context. When I was in basic training, and after we got through basic training, it was more into AIT, a lot of the sergeants that were teaching our classes, they would ask different recruits, so where are you going, son? Where are you going after AIT? Where's your next duty station? And you know, everyone would tell them. And every single time I said, Sergeant, I'm going to the 194th Armored Brigade, Sergeant. And they would just shake their head or shake their head and laugh and walk away. And after this happened several times, I finally worked up enough courage. I said, Sergeant, why is it that every time I tell someone that asks me where I'm going after basic, that they shake their head and laugh and walk away? And he gets right close to me. He says, son, you're going to the $1.94 Slave Brigade. You're going to see more time in the field than the troops in Europe. And he was right. I did. We were in some way, shape, or form in training in the field 9 months out of the year. And looking back at it, it was probably the best thing in the world that could have ever happened to me, because I did okay in garrison. You know, all my stuff was spit shined and orderly and things like that. But when you're in garrison, that leaves a lot of spare time to where you don't make the most of your time. And when I was in the field, I lived in the field. I mean, that was my element. And I probably would have been very happy serving the entire time that I was in the field. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And now, I think, let's see, I wrote a couple notes down just for dates. It was 194th Armored Brigade that I served in, which was the spear tip of the United States Army's Rapid Deployment Force. And we were we were good. We were good because we were basically trained in United States tactics and Soviet tactics. We went all over the United States, all these different military bases. We went against airborne, air assault, armored. We went against all these other units all across the United States as the OPFOR, and we trained and practiced in Soviet tactics. And in doing so, you can't unlearn what you've learned from U.S. tactics. So we were able to combine the best of both worlds. And we did extremely well in all of our training against all of these other units. And however, things being as they were, you know, the collapse of the wall, the Soviet Union was no longer a thing, and praise Jesus. And so they disbanded the 194th Armored Brigade. However, they reactivated the 194th Armored Brigade that had a very, in my humble opinion, a very proud history, a very combat-oriented history without seeing combat, mind you. They relegated it to a basic training brigade. So now they are in Fort Benning, Georgia, as of 2007. And if you've ever served in the military, just imagine the one unit that you were with that had outstanding esprit de corps. You were very proud to serve with them, and them disbanding that's sad enough. But then to relegate it as a basic training brigade, that was, you know, adding insult to injury, in my humble opinion. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. It is what it is. And as far as stories go, I probably could pull 20 to 30 from every field problem we served. And like I said, we were in the field, either training ourselves or being OPFOR against other units 9 months out of the year. So I probably easily could have 20, 30 excellent stories for every single one of those field problems. But one comes up to mind, and it really isn't all that exciting. And but it really stands out in my mind. The first time I went to the National Training Center at Fort Irwin, California, it's in the Mojave Desert, and we did a lot of training in the desert. You know, they sort of knew what was going on, so they were prepping us for it. But we went to the National Training Center, and when I first got to Troop Delta 10th United States Cavalry, they were shy tankers. And all through basic training and AIT, scouts, they're conditioned to badmouth tankers. And we called them DATs, dumb arse tankers. And, it was just, that's what they did. And so we went to National Training Center. I was on a tank. And so I was with Advanced Party. So from us leaving Fort Knox to get there, and then when I finally got back, it was in excess of 40 days. And about 30 days while we were there, it was in the field. And so we were in simulated combat the whole time. Well, our tank pack blew. And that's, a tank pack is the engine. It blew. We were in the middle of a fight. And so the battle continues forward. D10, my unit, we were pushing back the enemy, pushing back the enemy, pushing back the enemy. So we were dead in the desert. Well, they keep right on going just like it's real combat. Well, we wound up being in the desert for 6 days, right there. And they did an air drop for us. They sent out helicopters after a few days, and they dropped off and buried some sea rations and some 5-gallon water cans of water for us. And since I was the scout, basically anything had anything to do with scouting, you know, I was the designated go-to guy and on the tank. So I located the drop and had to make a few different trips back with, you know, one of the other guys on the tank, because you couldn't leave the tank completely empty. And because we still had power, even though we didn't run it, we could turn the power back on and traverse the turret and to be able to fire if we needed to, and provide some level of security while we were there. But we got the sea rats, got the water, got all that back there. And the last night we were there, we were all pretty much fed up. We were just done with it. And you know, there, like the first day or so, you could hear, you know, the battle going on and things like that, but we heard nothing, because it's the Mojave Desert. There's like nothing there. We got excited when we saw a bug. Literally, we would track bugs down. We would find the footprints in the sand of a bug and would follow it till we found the bug, you know, around our little area we were in. So we were excited when we saw a bug. That's how dead it was. However, there is life there. And so the last night we were there, we got fed up. Our tank commander was fed up. So we decided that we were just going to go ahead and burn the boxes that our sea rats came in. And so we was getting pretty close to dusk, and we started the fire, and we heard some yips. Those coyotes. And we heard them over here, heard them back there, heard them over here, and it started getting louder. And where we were, there were dunes. I mean, they weren't, there was scrub, like sagebrush and stuff up on these things. And so there was some vegetation. And so it started getting dark. And between two of these dunes, at approximately maybe 30 yards away, I saw coyotes dart past. My battery died, I had to change it out. But anyway, I saw these coyotes, and there were a few, and they really started yipping it up, and we realized that they were 360 degrees around us. And so, us being the young fools that we were, we went over the sponson boxes at the tank, which is great big storage things on the fenders. We pulled out the mattock handle, we pulled out the axe. Yeah, we were to do a number on these coyote. And our tank commander, he said, "Calm down, boys, go ahead and get inside." And so we did. And the next morning, after we had awakened, you know, we looked through the little vision slits and our little periscopes, and, you know, there was nothing anywhere around. We got up on top of the tank, and the entire surface, anything that was flat that could be stood upon, had paw prints on everything. Anyone that had any food whatsoever in their packs or their duffel bags in the bustle rack of the turret, they were ripped to shreds, and stuff was just everywhere. Every square inch of sand around our tank was textured with paw prints. There wasn't a single flat, smooth surface anywhere on the sand around our tank. And we went looking around. Every single location where we dug a cat hole, and a cat hole is a hole you dig to go poo in, all those had been dug up. All of the areas that we had dug holes and buried our sea ration cans, any of our trash or anything like that, all those were dug up. And all of the sea ration cans were crunched. They were licked completely clean. it was, it was crazy. I have no idea how many coyotes were in this pack, but they made a serious impression on me. And about half an hour later, we saw a couple vehicles come up. They were friendlies, and they had a tank engine ready for us. We had a tank retriever with them, and we pulled the old pack, replaced it with a new, and went back off to simulated battle. But like I said, I mean, who wants to hear all this stuff? I don't know, but I have hundreds of stories about those times, and they're all incredibly fond memories, because I was blessed with the ability to being able to serve without having to see combat. I was ready, I was prepared, as well as anyone could be, probably much better than most in the stateside military at the time, because of, by nature of how well we trained and how frequently we trained. But I was very blessed to have served when I did, and it was one of the most remarkable times of my life, and a center point as to who and what I became afterwards. It was the most important thing, the most important decision that I ever made was to join the United States military. And just about everything I do in my life today that I consider a success, I can contribute that decision-making process to what I learned and what I did when I was in the United States Army. Well, folks, there you have it. My very first viewer Q&A. Very possibly could be my last. However, if you enjoyed this and you'd like to possibly participate in and or see another viewer Q&A in the future, please put it in the comments section below. As a matter of fact, if you're amiable to participating in one of these, go ahead and put questions down in the comments section below as far as things you'd like to have me answer for you. And it could pertain to any one of the videos I've done. It could be general questions, things like that. Maybe something I've not done a video on, but you just want to know my take on it. That would be perfectly fine. Just go ahead and put it down in the comments section below. And well, I had a good time doing this. I loved reading through all of the old comments and, you know, collecting up a few that I could add to the list. And for those of you that participated in the community section and you wrote down your questions, thank you very much. And if you noticed, I did not put anyone's names or, you know, whatever the little numbers and stuff are. Didn't mention any of that. That's for your privacy. But I deeply appreciate your participation in this and the questions you went and wrote down. And hopefully you were happy with the answers that you received. Well, folks, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.